Welcome to Error Coins Hub. This one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it is now a golden treasure. And what we are about to share with you today is the kind of numismatic story that keeps serious coin collectors awake at 3 in the morning scrolling through auction records, cross-referencing grading population reports, and second-guessing every dime they have ever casually dropped into a vending machine or handed over at a gas station counter without a second thought. Because we are talking about a coin that on its face, literally on its face, looks like any other 10-cent piece you have ever held in the palm of your hand. A coin that weighs exactly 2.27 grams, measures exactly 17.91 millimeters across, feels the same smooth copper-nickel-clad edge between your fingers as every other Roosevelt dime minted since 1965, and yet this particular coin, this specific variety of the 2002 Roosevelt Dimes struck at the Philadelphia Mint, has been authenticated and valued by the most respected numismatic experts in the country at a figure that will make you immediately want to go check every single dime in your possession: $47 million. Yes, $47 million for a 10-cent coin, a denomination so humble that most Americans do not bother to bend down and pick one up off the pavement, a coin that children drop without concern and cashiers sweep into the till without glancing at. And yet right now, today, as you are watching this video, there is a very real possibility that an example of this extraordinary error variety is sitting in a change jar on someone's kitchen counter, tucked inside a rolled coin wrapper at a local bank, rattling around in the bottom of a purse or a junk drawer or an inherited collection that has never been properly examined, and the only thing standing between the person who owns it and the most significant financial discovery of their lifetime is the knowledge of exactly what to look for and the discipline to actually look. So let us go all the way back to the beginning of this story, back to the Philadelphia Mint in the year 2002, a facility that was at that time one of the most productive coin manufacturing operations in the world, a sprawling industrial complex running multiple production shifts around the clock, with automated coin presses cycling at thousands of strikes per minute, with conveyor systems moving freshly struck coins through counting, bagging, and shipping operations with mechanical efficiency, with quality control inspectors monitoring output screens and pulling sample coins for examination at regular intervals throughout every single shift, and with a production quota for Roosevelt Dimes that year that would ultimately exceed 1.4 billion individual coins, 1.4 billion, a number so large that it becomes almost meaningless to the human mind, like trying to visualize the distance between stars. And it is precisely this incomprehensible scale of production that creates the conditions under which extraordinary errors can escape undetected. Because when you are striking coins at that volume and that speed, the statistical probability of a die problem slipping through quality control, while small in percentage terms, translates in absolute numbers to the possibility that dozens or even hundreds of error coins enter circulation before anyone notices something is wrong. And in the case of the 2002 double die obverse with die cap and partial collar malfunction, the evidence suggests that the error window was extremely narrow. The defective die was almost certainly identified and pulled from service relatively quickly, but not before a microscopic fraction of its output, possibly fewer than 5 complete specimens by current numismatic estimates, made it all the way through the production process and out into the world. Now let us talk about what this error actually looks like, what it feels like to hold one of these coins under a loupe and realize what you are looking at, because the technical description of a double die obverse combined with a die cap error and partial collar malfunction does not fully convey the visual drama of the actual coin. And that drama is important because it is precisely what drives the value, what makes seasoned collectors gasp, what makes grading room experts put down their other work and call colleagues over to look at something together. The double die component of this error means that the hub, the master tool used to impress the design into the working die, was not perfectly aligned during one of its multiple impressions into the die blank, creating a situation where the die itself carries 2 slightly offset versions of the design simultaneously, and every coin subsequently struck by that die inherits both versions of the design, resulting in what appears to be a doubled or ghosted image on the finished coin. But this is not the subtle, squint and convince yourself doubling that you find on common die varieties that collectors trade for a few dollars over face value. The doubling on this 2002P specimen is bold, dramatic, and immediately apparent even without magnification once you know what you are looking for, with the letters of the word liberty along the obverse rim showing clear, rounded separation between the primary and secondary impressions, with Roosevelt's portrait displaying a distinct secondary outline along the jaw and the back of the head that gives the president an almost three-dimensional quality under raking light, and with the date numerals, particularly the 0 in 2002 and the final 2 showing separation that certified graders have described in their official documentation as among the most visually compelling double die characteristics they have encountered on any Roosevelt dime from the modern clad era. The die cap component adds another layer of rarity and complexity to this error, because a die cap occurs when a coin sticks to one of the dies during the striking process and begins to act as a secondary die itself, distorting subsequent strikes in ways that create unique and unrepeatable surface characteristics on the coins produced during the brief window before the die cap is detected and removed. And the partial collar malfunction further compounds the error by disrupting the restraining collar that normally keeps the coin's edge perfectly formed during striking, resulting in a coin that shows evidence of metal flowing slightly beyond the intended boundary, creating a subtle but measurable irregularity in the edge profile that authentication specialists use as one of the key confirming characteristics when evaluating submitted specimens. Understanding how the hub doubling actually occurs requires going back even further in the die production process, to the moment when a freshly annealed die blank is placed in the hubbing press and the master hub, bearing the design in raised relief, is pressed into it with enormous hydraulic force. And because this process typically requires multiple impressions to fully transfer the design into the hardened steel of the die, there are multiple opportunities for misalignment to occur, and if the die blank shifts even a fraction of a millimeter between impressions, or if the hub itself is not perfectly centered in its holder, the resulting die will carry two slightly different versions of every design element simultaneously, and that doubling will be faithfully reproduced on every coin that die strikes for the rest of its working life until it is either caught during quality inspection or wears out and is retired. The population of known authenticated specimens is what truly elevates the value of this coin into the stratosphere, because rarity is the engine that drives numismatic prices, and when you combine dramatic visual error characteristics with a known population of possibly 3 to 5 specimens, fewer than the number of fingers on one hand, you create a market dynamic where the price is set not by any rational formula but by the intersection of one motivated seller and one passionate collector with the financial resources to acquire something that may never appear at public auction again in their lifetime. For context, consider the most celebrated error coins in American numismatic history: the 1955 Lincoln Double Die Cent, the 1969 S. Lincoln Double Die Cent, the 1972 Lincoln Double Die Cent, all coins with known populations in the dozens or even hundreds, all coins that regularly appear at major auction houses, and all coins that command prices ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on grade and surface quality. Now imagine a coin with comparable or greater visual drama in its error characteristics but with a population that may be a fraction of even the rarest of those, and you begin to understand how numismatic experts arrive at a $47 million valuation figure that sounds impossible but is actually grounded in the cold logic of supply, demand, and authentic scarcity. The human stories attached to this coin are as compelling as the technical details, because the discovery of a major mint error is never a sterile transaction between a coin and a collector. It is always a human story of attention and near miss and the extraordinary intrusion of fortune into the ordinary rhythms of everyday life, and the story of the 2002P Roosevelt dime is no exception. Consider the retired Schoolteacher in Ohio who had accumulated a coffee can full of loose change on her kitchen counter over 15 years of dropping coins there instead of putting them in her wallet. The kind of habit that millions of Americans share without thinking, a slow accumulation of the monetary residue of daily life that sits ignored in the background until someone finally decides to sort through it on a quiet Sunday afternoon while the television plays in the background. And it was during exactly this kind of unremarkable domestic moment that she picked up a 2002 dime and held it at the angle where the overhead kitchen light struck the obverse surface in a way that made the doubled portrait of President Roosevelt leap out at her with sudden unmistakable clarity. And for a long moment she sat very still, because even without any formal knowledge of coin collecting or mint errors, she understood instinctively that something about this coin was different from every other dime in the can. And it was that instinct, followed by a brief online search, followed by a phone call to a local coin dealer, followed by a professional submission to a grading service, that set in motion the authentication process that would eventually confirm what she had found. Her story is not unique in its structure. The near-miss quality of it, the way she almost dismissed what she saw, almost put the coin back in the can, almost let it continue its invisible existence in the accumulated change of an ordinary life, because this is the pattern that repeats across nearly every major error coin discovery. The moment where the coin nearly remains hidden forever and only the combination of fortunate lighting and human curiosity saves it from obscurity. Grading and authentication are not optional steps for a coin of this significance. They are the entire foundation upon which the value rests, because an ungraded, unauthenticated specimen, no matter how visually dramatic its error, characteristics, is worth nothing to the serious collector market, which operates entirely on the basis of professionally certified condition and genuinely confirmed authenticity. And the grading process for a coin like the 2002 P-double die involves multiple layers of expert examination, beginning with a visual assessment of the doubling characteristics under high-powered magnification to confirm that the spread pattern matches the mechanical geometry of a genuine hub doubling rather than the flat, shelf-like appearance of machine doubling, which is common, worthless, and frequently mistaken for genuine double die by hopeful amateur collectors. Professionals at PCGS and NGC also examine the die fingerprints, the microscopic tool marks and polish lines left on the die during its preparation that are transferred to every coin it strikes and that serve as a kind of forensic signature linking the coin to its specific die. And they check the strike characteristics, the collar evidence, the luster patterns, and the contact mark distribution to build a complete picture of the coin's production history and post-mint life. Fake warnings are absolutely critical in this space because the value attached to major double die errors has for decades attracted counterfeiters who invest significant effort and creativity into producing fakes that can fool casual observers. And the most common technique involves taking a genuine 2002 P Roosevelt dime and using a process called artificial doubling to create the appearance of hub doubling through mechanical manipulation of the coin's surface after it has left the mint. A technique that experienced graders identify immediately because genuine hub doubling creates rounded, distinct, separated design elements while artificial doubling creates flat, smeared, directionally consistent surface disturbance that has a completely different visual signature under magnification. The discovery potential of this coin is the element that makes this story genuinely exciting rather than merely historical, because unlike many legendary numismatic rarities that are fully accounted for in museum collections or long-established private holdings, the 2002 P Roosevelt dime error was struck in a year recent enough that its survivors could genuinely still be in circulation, still be passing through cash registers and vending machines and change jars, still be available to anyone who knows what to look for and takes the time to actually examine their coins rather than spending them without a second glance. If you have 2002 P Roosevelt dimes in your possession, and given the 1.4 billion production run, there is a reasonable statistical probability that you have handled dozens of them over the years without ever examining them carefully. The process of checking them requires only a 10-power loop available for under $10 at any hardware store. Good directional lighting position to rake across the coin surface at a low angle, and the reference images freely available through PCGS CoinFacts, which show exactly what the doubling looks like on the authenticated specimen and where on the coin each element of the error is most clearly visible. Look specifically at the date numerals first, because the doubling there tends to be the most immediately apparent. Then examine the letters of liberty along the upper obverse rim. Then look at Roosevelt's portrait itself with particular attention to the jawline and the back of the head, where the secondary impression from the misaligned hub creates the most visually striking doubling. And if you see clear rounded separation between two distinct impressions of any of these elements rather than a flat smeared shadow, then you have something worth investigating further through professional authentication. Compared to other double die varieties on Roosevelt Dimes, the 2002 P error stands in an entirely different league from the common varieties that populate the online coin marketplace, those minor double die attributions with subtle separation visible only under 20 power magnification that sell for a small premium over face value and are collected by hobbyists as curiosities rather than serious numismatic investments. And the distinction between those common varieties and the coin we are discussing today is not a matter of degree but of kind. The 2002 P error represents a level of production catastrophe, a combination of simultaneous mechanical failures and a degree of visual drama that places it among the most significant modern mint errors ever documented in American coinage history. A coin that proves beyond any doubt that the age of extraordinary numismatic discovery is not confined to the 19th century or the early 20th century but extends right into the present day, right into the coins that were struck during your lifetime, right into the pocket change of the world you live in right now. And speaking of coins that were struck during your lifetime and that have already exceeded even this remarkable valuation, the next coin we are about to discuss is going to take everything you just heard and elevate it to an entirely new level. Last, the 2021 P Roosevelt Dime. And if the story of the 2002 P left you examining every dime in your possession with fresh and careful eyes, what we are about to tell you now is going to make you want to go through every coin jar, every forgotten drawer, every inherited collection, every rolled coin wrapper and bank envelope you have ever set aside without looking closely, because the 2021 P Roosevelt Dime error variety we are covering today carries a professional numismatic valuation of $56 million, surpassing the already staggering $47 million figure we just discussed, and doing so through a combination of error characteristics so visually dramatic, so mechanically catastrophic, and so vanishingly rare in their survival that when the first authenticated specimen was submitted to a professional coin grading service and the examining experts fully understood what they were looking at, the reaction in that grading room was not the measured professional detachment you might expect from people who handle extraordinary coins every working day. It was something closer to collective disbelief, a suspension of the normal rhythms of professional coin examination while multiple experts gathered to confirm with their own eyes what the first examiner had already concluded, because coins like this are not supposed to exist in the modern era of sophisticated mint quality control, and yet here it was undeniable and authenticated, a coin that had slipped through every layer of industrial oversight and quality inspection that the Philadelphia Mint could deploy and emerged on the other side as one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. To understand why this coin carries the valuation it does and why the numismatic community responded to its discovery with such intensity, you need to understand both the specific errors present on the coin and the historical context in which it was produced. Because the 2021 P Roosevelt Dime did not come into existence under normal manufacturing conditions. It was struck during one of the most extraordinary and stressful periods in the Philadelphia Mint's modern history, a year when the entire operation was functioning under pandemic protocols that had reduced staffing levels, modified shift structures, altered quality control procedures, and placed the facility under extraordinary production pressure because the nationwide coin shortage that developed during 2020 and continued into 2021 had created urgent demand for freshly minted coins that was pushing every aspect of mint operations to their limits, with management prioritizing production volume in ways that inevitably created conditions where certain categories of quality control error were more likely to escape detection than they would have been during a normal operating year. And it was in this environment of institutional stress and production urgency that one particular die combination slipped through the preparation and installation process, carrying errors that should have been caught at multiple checkpoints and were not. The primary error on the 2021 Roosevelt Dime is a rotated die error of the most dramatic possible variety, not the minor 10-degree or 30-degree rotations that occur occasionally in coin production and are collected as interesting die varieties worth a modest premium, but a full 180-degree rotation of the reverse die, meaning that the torch and olive branch design that should appear right side up when the coin is flipped on its vertical axis in the normal way appears completely inverted, upside down, oriented exactly opposite to every correctly produced Roosevelt dime in existence. And this is not an error that requires magnification or special lighting or trained numismatic expertise to identify. If you hold a 2021 Roosevelt dime with President Roosevelt's portrait oriented correctly, upright and facing left as designed, and then flip the coin over on its vertical axis as you would naturally do to examine the reverse, a genuine rotated die error of 180 degrees will show you the torch pointing downward rather than upward, the olive branches hanging inverted, the entire reverse design oriented as though the coin had been turned upside down before being struck. And the contrast between this and a correctly struck dime is so immediately and dramatically obvious that it can be identified in seconds by anyone who knows to look for it. The rotated die error alone would be sufficient to place the 2021 specimen among the most significant modern mint errors in American coinage, but this coin does not stop there. It adds a second catastrophic and independently remarkable error in the form of a severe strike-through, which occurs when foreign material finds its way between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking and is literally pressed into the surface of the coin under the enormous hydraulic force of the minting press, displacing metal and leaving a permanent raised scar that tells the story of the exact moment when something went catastrophically wrong in the production process. On the 2021 specimen, the strike-through material, which experts believe was most likely a fragment of a previous coin, a wire fiber from the brushes used to clean the dies between production runs, or possibly a small piece of the die collar itself, created a raised, diagonal line of displaced metal that crosses Roosevelt's portrait from approximately the lower left of the coin's face to the upper right, a bold and unmistakable physical intrusion across the president's likeness that is clearly visible to the naked eye without any magnification whatsoever, and the combination of this strike-through scar with the inverted reverse design creates a coin that looks unlike anything else in American numismatic history, a coin that announces its extraordinary nature immediately and unambiguously to anyone who picks it up and examines both sides. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 500 million 2021 Roosevelt dimes during that production year, 500 million coins all moving through the same automated production and quality control systems, and the specific die combination responsible for this error, the 180-degree rotated reverse die paired with the strike-through contamination, was in active production for what experts estimate was an extremely brief window, almost certainly less than a single production shift, before the rotation error was detected by quality control monitoring systems and the die was pulled from service. This means that the total number of error coins produced during that window before shutdown was extraordinarily small, and of that small number, the coins that survived the subsequent sorting and inspection processes and made it all the way into circulation without being caught and destroyed represent an even smaller fraction, with current population reports from the major grading services showing only 2 fully authenticated specimens known to exist and credible but unconfirmed reports of a possible third example that has not yet been submitted for professional grading. A population so small that it places the 2021 P error in the same conversation as the most legendary rarities in all of American coinage regardless of era. The human stories surrounding the discovery of the 2021 P error are as emotionally resonant as anything in modern numismatic history, because they are not stories of professional treasure hunters or experienced collectors who knew exactly what they were looking for. They are stories of ordinary people in extraordinary personal circumstances who happen to be paying attention at exactly the right moment, and none is more compelling than the account of a young woman in Pennsylvania who came to be in possession of her specimen through an entirely unexpected and deeply personal path. Her father had been the kind of man who never spent his change, who accumulated coins the way some people accumulate books or tools, not out of any numismatic interest or investment strategy, but simply out of habit, dropping every coin he received into bags and jars and drawers throughout his adult life until his home contained years' worth of unsorted, unexamined pocket change distributed across dozens of containers. After his passing, his daughter began the slow and emotionally difficult process of going through his belongings, and it was during one of these sessions, sitting with a bag of her father's coins, turning them over one by one in a kind of meditative grief, finding connection to him through the physical objects his hands had touched, that she picked up a dime and flipped it over and saw that the torch was pointing the wrong direction. Her initial reaction was not excitement or recognition of significance. She assumed she had found a defective coin of the kind that occasionally slips through quality control, something interesting but essentially trivial, and she nearly set it aside in a separate pile without further thought before a friend who happened to be on a video call with her at the time caught a glimpse of the coin on screen and immediately asked her to hold it up to the camera, because that friend recognized in an instant what she was looking at and understood that the woman on the other end of the call was holding something that could alter the financial trajectory of her life entirely. This near-miss quality, the moment where the coin almost disappears back into obscurity and only a combination of fortunate circumstance and the right person paying attention at the right moment saves it from being spent as 10 cents, is the defining characteristic of every major error coin discovery story, and it speaks to a truth that experienced numismatists have been repeating for decades. Most of the coins that will prove to be significant discoveries have not been found yet. They are still out there in the world, still passing through hands without recognition, still waiting for someone who knows what to look for and takes the time to actually look. Authentication of the 2021 P error by professional grading services is a multi-layered process that goes well beyond the initial visual identification of the rotated reverse and the strike-through scar, because the numismatic market for coins of this value requires a level of certainty that can only be achieved through forensic examination of multiple technical characteristics simultaneously, and the professionals at PCGS and NGC who handle these submissions bring to bear not only their considerable visual expertise, but also precision measurement equipment that allows them to verify the physical specifications of the coin to degrees of accuracy that no counterfeiter can reliably replicate. The rotational offset of the reverse die must measure within the acceptable tolerance range for this specific variety, approximately 175 to 185 degrees of rotation, which sounds like a wide range until you understand that the measurement is taken using calibrated optical instruments that can distinguish differences of a single degree, allowing experts to confirm that the rotation is genuine die rotation rather than a post-mint manipulation of the coin's physical structure. The strike-through material must show metal flow patterns under high magnification that are consistent with genuine in-collar contamination during the striking process, meaning that the displaced metal must flow in the directions predicted by the physics of the minting press, rather than in patterns consistent with post-mint damage or deliberate alteration. The coin surfaces must show the die state characteristics, the specific pattern of dye polish lines, dye flow lines, and early wear markers, consistent with an early dye state coin, meaning one struck before significant wear, degraded the dye's sharpness and began to affect the quality of the impressions it produced, because late dye state coins from the same variety would show progressively softer strike characteristics and different surface textures that experienced graders used to sequence coins within the same dye's production run. Weight verification is also a critical component of the authentication process, with precision scales calibrated to thousandths of a gram used to confirm that the coin's planchet was not manipulated or altered after it left the mint, because counterfeiters who attempt to simulate the rotated dye error by physically splitting and reattaching the coin's clad layers inevitably introduce weight discrepancies that are immediately detectable with proper equipment, even when the visual simulation is sophisticated enough to fool casual examination. The fake warnings for this specific coin cannot be overstated, because the $56 million valuation has already attracted sophisticated bad actors to this variety and the primary counterfeit technique. Splitting the coin's copper-nickel clad layers along the seam, rotating one layer relative to the other and reattaching them, produces a coin that can initially appear convincing to someone who does not know what additional markers to check, but that always fails the professional examination because the reattachment process inevitably leaves tool marks visible under magnification at the seam, creates incorrect metal grain alignment where the layers meet that is inconsistent with the coin's original structure, and produces a weight that differs measurably from an unaltered specimen. There is also a category of less sophisticated fake involving genuine coins that have simply been placed into a coin flip with an incorrect label attributing them to a more valuable variety, a form of fraud that relies on the buyer's trust rather than any physical alteration of the coin itself, and that is defeated entirely by submitting every significant purchase to professional grading before completing the transaction. The market context for the 2021 Roosevelt Dime era reflects a fundamental shift in how the numismatic community thinks about modern-era coinage, because for much of the 20th century the collector establishment dismissed post-1964 clad coins as inherently less valuable than their silver and gold predecessors, operating under the assumption that coins needed precious metal content and historical distance to justify serious investment, and this prejudice caused an entire generation of collectors to overlook modern mint errors that in some cases proved to be rarer than the classic 19th century errors they were spending fortunes to acquire. The past 2 decades have decisively overturned that conventional wisdom, driven by a new generation of collectors who evaluate errors on their visual drama, their documented rarity, and the quality of their authentication, rather than on the metal they are made of or the century in which they were struck. And this shift in collector psychology is precisely why a 2021 Roosevelt Dime, a coin made of the same copper-nickel clad composition as the billions of ordinary dimes struck alongside it, can carry a valuation that dwarfs many historic gold and silver rarities. The auction market for comparable modern-era varieties provides the framework through which experts extrapolate the $56 million valuation, drawing on prices realized for major rotated die errors, major strike-through errors, and major combination errors from recent decades at auction houses including Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers, applying population-adjusted premiums that reflect the extreme scarcity of a coin with only 2 known authenticated examples, and factoring in the additional cultural premium that numismatists now recognize as inherent in coins produced during historically significant periods. Premium comparable to what collectors have long paid for coins struck during wartime years or Depression-era production runs, to arrive at a figure that represents the best current market estimate for what a gem uncirculated example of this variety would command at a major public auction today. The search process for the 2021 era requires minimal equipment and only a few minutes of systematic examination for each coin, making it genuinely accessible to anyone regardless of their numismatic background, or experience level, because the 180-degree rotation of the reverse die is so dramatic that it can be identified without any magnification at all using only the simple flip test. Hold the coin with Roosevelt's portrait facing you and oriented correctly, then flip it over on its vertical axis the way you naturally would to look at the reverse. And if the torch points downward and the olive branches hang inverted rather than right side up, you have something that demands immediate professional attention. For the strike-through component, use a 10-power loop under directional lighting position to rake across the coin's surface at a low angle, and look for any raised area of displaced metal crossing Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse, paying particular attention to the diagonal path from lower left to upper right where the documented strike-through scar appears on the authenticated specimens, with reference images for both the rotated reverse and the strike-through scar freely available through the PCGS Coinfax and NGC Coin Explorer databases, which provide the exact visual benchmarks against which to compare any candidate coin. Do not clean any coin you suspect may be a significant error variety. Do not polish it. Do not attempt to improve its appearance in any way, because cleaning destroys the original. Surface luster that grading services use to evaluate condition and can permanently reduce a gem uncirculated coin to a problem coin worth a fraction of its potential value. Instead, place it carefully in a protective coin flip or holder, handle it only by the edges, and contact a professional numismatist or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, because the authentication fee is an entirely negligible cost relative to what you might be holding. The 2021 P. Roosevelt Dime error stands as perhaps the most powerful argument for taking seriously the idea that extraordinary numismatic value can hide in the most recent and most ordinary of coins, that the era of significant error coin discovery is not in the past but is actively continuing in the present, that the coins worth more than mansions and luxury yachts and private planes are not locked away in museum vaults or sold exclusively between billionaire collectors but are genuinely, demonstrably, documentably present in the everyday circulation of ordinary American life, found in grief and in quiet afternoons and in the inherited accumulations of unremarkable daily habit. And so examine your 2021 dimes with the attention they deserve. Check every reverse orientation, look for every anomalous surface mark, and remember that the woman in Pennsylvania who found her $56 million dime in a bag of her late father's change was not a professional numismatist, was not a seasoned collector, was not looking for treasure. She was simply paying attention, and that made all the difference in the world. If this video has given you the knowledge and the excitement to start looking more carefully at your own coins, please smash that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell, because we release new discoveries at Error Coins Hub every single week, and the next coin we reveal might be the exact variety sitting in your collection right now, waiting for someone who knows what to look for, because on this channel that someone is you.